Well, first of all, they actually held a meeting in person, which after last year is a development we should all welcome, and one that is not easy to pull off. So delightful that they held it in person in Cornwall. But second, on substance, there were at least two big developments, both of which were items on which proponents would have gone further, but there were at least developments. One of those was the commitment to donate 1 billion doses of vaccine to countries that need it, countries that are lagging in their vaccination efforts. Proponents have suggested that that should be a much more ambitious total. The IMF has criticized that number, but there is that commitment, which brings the total donated by the G7 countries to approximately 2 billion doses. And second, there is the language that you discussed earlier regarding China, which was certainly not as aggressive or ambitious or hard-hitting as proponents would have liked it to be, and certainly those in the United States negotiating that language would have liked it to be. But it was a reference to China, and there was a reference to human rights issues in Xinjiang and in Hong Kong, as well as to market distorting economic and trade practices that China undertook. So that was a development, one that, if not as hard-hitting as some would have liked, was at least a step toward presenting a unified front on the China issue.
How do you see this changing the calculus in Beijing in that sense? Because at the end of the day, what we saw over the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency obviously was a non-unified front, if you will, at least with European leaders. Does that change their calculus, do you think? Or are they going to continue to play the long game here?
I expect they'll continue to play the long game here. You do see the G7 putting out a statement that references China, which is tough, but it's not as tough as some would have liked, and the Chinese certainly will notice that. It will not go unnoticed in Beijing that the language is spread across the statement and in a number of places is less tough than what was suggested during the negotiations. These statements, these communiques are excruciatingly wordsmithed and negotiated, and the Chinese pay acute attention to the specific words used. And while they have reacted with discontent to the references to Xinjiang and Hong Kong, nonetheless, I'm sure they're happy that it was not as tough as some negotiators would have liked and some proponents would have liked.
When it comes to this NATO meeting, of course, later on today on China, we heard from the Secretary General there. Are you just anticipating essentially more of the same of what we got out of the G7?
I do think there's more of the same. The G7 is an economic body. NATO is a security body. It's interesting to see them both confronting China and Russia in their own way, in their own sphere. What will be interesting to see is what the measures that the Secretary General referenced, other than sanctions, that can be used to deal with Russia will be, if there are any specified. As well, it will be interesting to see how the G7 countries carry forward their statement in the G7 communique regarding China and the concomitant statements that they had about Russia. I don't think it's clear exactly what the next steps are for either of those bodies, and so it would be something we need to watch over coming months.